All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Edric Poon and Company, the podcast where anybody can inspire everybody. I'm Edric, your host, and this week we are making it a point to put the spotlight on something bigger than you and me and our learning, and that's helping others. So I've got Nichol Ng, owner over at X Inc., the multi-million-dollar group of companies. She's also the co-founder of Food Bank Singapore and the president of One Singapore. So before we start the podcast, find out how you can do your part. Visit foodbank.sg and see where you could help reduce food waste and help serve the hungry in Singapore. So whoever's been watching and listening this far, thank you so much for liking, commenting, and subscribing and all your support. Remember, go to foodbank.sg. And now, on to the podcast we go. Hey, hi, Nichol.
Hi, Edric.
Hey, thanks so much for joining the show. I really appreciate it.
Most welcome. Thanks for having me.
No problem, no problem. Hey, so Nichol, you are extremely busy as always. You've got so many businesses under your name, and plus you're also so involved in more than just one organization outside of your work. One of those that we are really putting in focus today, as you've heard earlier on, is really about Food Bank. We would love to find out a little bit more about how you actually began Food Bank, how what really got to you to say that, look, we can make a difference here. And it doesn't necessarily need a multi-million-dollar investment. It doesn't necessarily need a lot of people, but has to start from somewhere. So could you please share that story with us?
Yeah, most certainly, and it'll be my pleasure as well. I thought it would be interesting for me to share a little bit about my own background. So, some of you may already know I do a lot of food distribution. So, actually, food is in our bloodline. So, my grandfather started the business in 1934. And basically, as a family business, we have kind of survived quite a few crises and quite a few pandemics, and including at one point during the 97 currency crisis, our family was bankrupt. So I was there uh, as a undergrad then at NUS. I actually saw my house being seized by the bank. So it was something that was completely life-changing at that juncture because my dad overexpended, and especially in today's world, I think the story was important for me to share because I think it resonates with the current culture that we have. We always feel that as entrepreneurs, and I think there's many serial entrepreneurs out there when it's one after another. My late father was actually the early days serial entrepreneur, right? But he really trusted the wrong people. I guess overexpended, and basically we completely lost the 250 million US dollar empire that he built in the early 90s, which in today's terms is about $1 billion. Amazingly, the only thing that he managed to do was to ring fence my grandfather's food business, which was then the smallest entity of the entire lot. So as I just wanted to set the stage to say that, hey, don't look at me like this successful business person. Of course, it's easy for her to start an NGO. That wasn't it at all. Because of this fall from grace, right, as a family, we had to start from scratch on a lot of levels. And so there was no succession planning as well. The food distribution business just became a company for my uncles and my dad to continue having some work to do. And we were already a well-known name back then in the industry. I was called back in 2002, 2003, shortly in between the first IT bubble burst and just before SARS hit. So that was the time when my dad said, hey, I need to come back for my first job at MediaCorp to say, hey, I need to digitize the business. And I also wanted to modernize the business as well. So I came back and I've been here ever since. So it's about close to 19 years already. So I told myself, if I ever had the opportunity to revive my grandfather's business or rebuild my late father's empire to a certain extent, I wanted to find a way to give back. So a business should not only be a business, but I felt that great sense of responsibility to firstly the industry that we're in, secondly also to the people that we serve. Because I'm just selling food, right? It's a no-brainer. I'm filling people's tummies. There must be something more to it, right? Like making people happy or something like that. But importantly, after I've learned in the industry and the amount of extravagant food that people throws away for very silly reasons, I told my brother that we have to start Singapore's first food bank, where we are here to salvage the excess food from the supply chain and then regenerate this food into whether is it to charities and organizations, and then allow them to feed the people on the ground. Because Singapore throws away 30% of everything that we import, and that's billions and billions of dollars of food that we are dumping. Some people might be wondering what type of food. So basically, we throw away, it's not just the ugly fruits and vegetables, okay? There are, as you all know, we live in a very clean island, like a hospital, with a very high, food safety standards and all that, which means that the SOPs are also far higher. And therefore, this actually causes a lot of food to be thrown away, number one. Number two, being entrepreneurs out there, if any of you are listening in, you might be thinking of, hey, there's this Korean snack, it's very popular. I want to bring it in because it's popular over there. But you don't know whether it will sell. So we've been receiving tons of these alternative or new products that's floating around in the market. Because Singapore is a free port, it's very easy for you to do business. There's no import taxes levied on most consumables. And so for anybody who wants to start a business, especially in F&B, it also then becomes very easy because the barriers to entries have come down. So this has constituted to, plus our affluent, higher disposable income. We are therefore being able to import more food, have a more luxurious, ample supply of food. And then on the other hand, we've kind of noticed that cost of food has been going up. But we notice definitely the cost of living has also been going up. Our incomes haven't doubled for sure. So just to give you a snapshot, when I first joined the industry in '03, the one tin of oil, the palm oil, it's about $10. If you ask me what's the market price now, we're looking at about $27. So it has gone up by 2.7 times, and I don't think our incomes, any one of our incomes, if any of our incomes have gone up by 2.7 times, please, share your tips with me. But I'm just saying, in general, most of our average incomes have not increased tremendously as much. So putting the two and two together, I told my brother, since our main business, we've kind of stabilized, paid off the debts, revived it, blah, 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 it's time for us to give back. So in 2010, we started our research into starting Singapore's first food bank. And in 2012, we actually bit the bullet and we successfully registered the name, the Food Bank Singapore, under the ACRA. And then we got our way going. Yeah.
Ah, okay. And thanks for the background, with all of that. And you had also mentioned something about, everything is going, basically the cost of food is going up, or the cost of food ingredients are going up even twice or more than that for certain items and all that. But on your website, it was also mentioned, right, that without the minimum wage, more and more of food poverty will actually kick in. And one of the biggest challenges is which is very strange, I think, for many to understand, is that with our affluence that goes up, but yet the poverty line it's invisible. I won't say that it's non-existent, but people don't see it. So how is it that we were able to then get this information and get these this data back so that you could effectively feed the right people as well?
Yeah. So we went into this blind in 2012. We knew for sure there were tons of charities that are already feeding people. So there was a need to feed. And because we knew that there was such a great social fabric already out there, the help network is out there. So firstly, we wanted to solve the food problem. So if I can feed these charities with excess food, it means that these charities need to spend less money to buy food to feed the people on the ground. So I think this is one very important point to note. So while we are a newcomer, a relatively newer comer to the food distribution pro bono program, but it doesn't mean that we don't have a role to play. So we kind of realized early on that, like including now, most charities will ask you to go out to the supermarket, buy X number of rice, buy X number of oil, blah, blah, blah. And then after that, donate these items to the charities. But what if I told you there was already stacks of rice that someone is throwing away, or canned food that, it's not being sold, right? And like short shelf life, 4 or 5 months of items. Why can't we just regenerate a life into these food and then give it to the charity organizations that already has a proper means testing or a structure? So whether is it they have a team of social workers that has already been testing the ultimate end users. So we started out in 2012 solving the supply issue first. And like a food bank globally, so all the food banks around the world function in the same way. We are here to help our fellow peers that's in a feeding program somehow, or they have a cooked meals program, for example, to make use of the food that we are able to salvage in huge bulk quantities. So this is one. Secondly, we just know from the bottom of our hearts that Singapore doesn't have a minimum wage, it doesn't have a poverty line, but for sure, food insecurity exists amongst us. The other thing that's very interesting, especially for some expats, that I mean visiting on a short-term contract or something, you don't see poverty like how it is even in Hong Kong. Because homelessness is nearly non-existent in Singapore. Occasionally, you would see some campers around, and last year there was this huge report about finding a few thousand people, right? And then we were making this big hoo-ha about it. But the honest truth is that we grew up in an environment where poverty is not in your face, number one. You don't smell poverty. Singapore is so clean and pristine. You think that all these things do not exist, but they actually are isolated in the very nicely built HDB blocks. Doesn't matter whether is it rental blocks or even owned blocks, right? But everyone is hidden in their maybe 800 square feet space, for example. So our poverty is hidden. And it's actually also very prevalent in all first world countries where these are all the working poor. Because we have to remember, even during pandemic times, our unemployment rates are still relatively healthy, right? And so that means most people are duly employed. It also means that we actually should be fighting for minimum wage. I'm not putting any agenda out there, but I'm just saying that it's because a lot of people they have a job, but it's just that they are not being paid enough to put food on their table or to settle not just their 3 meals but their daily necessities. So coming back to your very major questions, we spent 2 or 3 years swimming in the dark, like in a swamp, right? We knew that we had to get to the bottom of this problem because there are hungry people out there, because the charities are also busy feeding people. But we also realized there's no food insecurity report in Singapore. So this was mooted by the donors. So the donors say, are you sure Singapore needs a food bank? Are you sure Singapore needs a food bank? So we were actually waiting for the government to release some numbers, which they didn't. So I think now it's 3 years ago, we bit the bullet and we decided to pay for our first ever national food insecurity report. So we paid a $250,000 to the Lien Center for Social Innovation under SMU to do up a report, which is Singapore's first national food insecurity numbers. So the numbers that came back was quite staggering. We're looking at about 10.4% of people who reside in Singapore that is not able to effectively feed themselves on a regular basis. So our gut feel kind of paid off. We knew for sure that there was a real need on the ground, but we didn't have statistics. And being a fellow Singaporean, we always rely on statistics, right? And without statistics, like nothing is quite real. So now that with 10.4% that's already, surfaced up, we wanted to actually deep dive further as well. So who constitutes this 10.4%? Are they just living in rental blocks, for example? So the numbers actually covers even private housing in landed property and private residential condominiums and all that as well. So actually, I would just like to, put it to the listeners out there as well that's, watching this podcast right now, that to us, hunger doesn't have a face. It doesn't mean that that person, must, scrabbily dress or whatever else. It might be your neighbor, it might be your teammate, it might be your fellow employee, it might be one of your employees, it might be one of the persons that you're working with, that's facing some kind of hunger situation, because hunger can strike anybody at any stages of their lives. Yeah.
Right. Thanks so much for that. And it's exactly the point, because like what you said, you can't smell poverty. Many a times, right, we tend to see those who are impoverished as maybe the old lady or the old man pushing cardboard down the road, and that seems to be the image of what poverty is. But exactly what you mentioned in Hong Kong, you can go to when you go to Tongloan that side, they always have all the and even Victoria, over in Victoria Park, the old people just staying there under the bridges, right? Especially
Mhm.
during the winter. So this is very normal for us to see. India as well, of course, you got those on the street, but in Singapore, you never ever ever see it. What can we do as
Yeah.
individuals, right, to be able to then now? The question is also how do we know? Because there was recently I remember that there was show on CNA. There was a coverage saying, talking a little bit more about food insecurity. But one of the biggest challenges was that there was a lot of food wastage because they started amassing food, and then suddenly, it's because I didn't want it or I can't eat it. So was there something that you had to face through this period as well to then better serve the community and give them what they needed as well?
So if I can do a shout out to everybody who is thinking of doing something. So um, don't get me wrong, I am very supportive of anybody doing a grassroots, ground up kind of initiative. There are many big hearted people out there. But the problem is because you do not know how to identify clearly which are the people in need, exactly which blocks. So what happens is the more popular the areas that you
Mm,
think are the people that needs help, a lot of corporates have just gone out to do their ground up, go door to door. If they're wealthy enough, I spend $10,000, just I buy all the bundles, I pack them, and then I just drop off the food. So a lot of this duplication happens is because if you are already in need or you are not earning a regular income, someone that gives you extra food, of course I take first lah. Like why would I reject something, right? So that's why part of the accumulation or duplication is because there's too many big-hearted people that's
mm,
going around helping, sometimes in the wrong way. So if I can do an appeal, not just for the food bank, but for any of the food charities out there, please go to an accredited food charity and ask them, hey, do you need help? Whether is it monetary help, volunteering help, and volunteer your services and your money through the legit organizations that already actually needs help, right? So that you yourself won't be fishing for this needle, in the dark ocean, not knowing actually, I guess that this block, needs 200 bags of these stuff. This is number one. Then the
mm.
second thing about duplication, right, I would like to mention is that this is a national project. The MSF is also doing because they themselves actually don't know where the food insecure people lies. There is no national database yet. So together, collectively, as all the food charities, we're now working very closely together under this food task force to actually start collecting data and cross-checking the addresses. And I would like to say that actually COVID has helped us a lot because if you remember the first circuit breaker that we were in last year, right? Because most of 95% of most of the NGOs on the ground, the family service centers were not permitted to open.
Mm.
The food bank and other of the larger food charities was asked to continue to operate as essential firms. And we then had to go door to door, which meant that we had to collect everybody's addresses and deliver meals door to door. And with that, we had the privilege of collecting people's actually data and then start populating this database as one. So we kind of then realized that, hey, actually when some big-hearted person actually neighbors would like to we receive a lot of emails from neighbors now like I think my neighbor auntie two doors down is not getting food because nobody is
Mm.
able to visit her. The social worker cannot visit her. The children also was not supposed to visit her. Can you please send food to her, for example? So there's someone that wrote, but maybe that person doesn't know that this particular lady is already getting help from somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
So, but with this database that we generated, we were able to pop in that lady's address and then say, hey, this auntie is really getting help. So we actually weeded out duplications one by one. But I think importantly also is I just wanted to share with everybody that there is a subsection of people that is in need, but they also don't know where to get help. So while CNA has done a great job, we were part of the interview as well. And they
Mm.
actually floated up to the surface, all the excess food, this uncle with stacks of rice. But
Yeah.
did you know that in our food insecurity report, it was shown that 70% of the severely food insecure, they don't know where to get help. So it means that there's also a problem with the food charities. It means that while they are giving out a lot of food, but is it like too much food is given to the same people? Or secondly, there's not enough marketing out there or the right kind of marketing where this group of people that really maybe is starving on a couple of days, per month, they don't know where to get help. And so we are trying to address this problem right now. Like, why do they not know where to get help when we ourselves as laymen, we see ourselves, a church, a temple, a mosque is giving out so much food, right? There's cooked
Yeah.
meals, there's food bundles and everything else. So
Mm.
it's a double-edged sword sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's a great question because how would you even know, that they are number one, they don't have the food insecurity, and the next question is why. So you and your team have actually gone door to door meeting some of these people, and what have but the responses been? Has it really been about the marketing?
Yeah. So I think there are a few problems, okay, that we learned during last year, during this severe COVID time. So firstly, some of the people actually genuinely either they are illiterate,
Ah,
and because they don't even have a mobile phone, they actually cut off to the world. So I mean, yes, they have a roof over their heads, right? So in a given regular scenario, they will just walk downstairs, buy their food, whatever. If they have, if there's no more income, the bank account left with $10, for example, then they have to really balance. Do I spend on making sure that I got utilities for the next week? Or is it like, do I have to pay the utilities first? Vis-a-vis like eating my sotapia, right? Like for the next couple.
mm,
So sometimes it's like this. And secondly, the way that aid is being disseminated in Singapore, it's a bit complicated. So I don't know how many of you are aware, but the way that Singapore does the means testing, it's quite complicated. So let's say at the school level, at the hospital level, maybe for the food level, the family service level, you want to get a bursary, etc. Your household family needs to be tested, right? So even if you have children that are not living with you, they need to declare their income, be asked very uncomfortable questions. So for some of the elderly, by right, I mean, I don't want to tell about my family stuff, so they would rather say, hey, if it's so difficult to get help, then I don't want to get help. I'll go figure out my own way. So this was one thing. And then the second thing is, which we have learned, is that some families actually know where to get all this food aid from. But their major complaint is this: I am not getting the food that I want to eat.
mm,
So they say, like a regular folk like you and I, we probably can walk into any food court, any kopitiam, any hawker center, any restaurant in a mall. Okay, so like now, we're asked to stay at home and things like that. We can choose, right? There's a
mm,
variety of items. So today I eat Indian, tomorrow I want to eat a mee siam, or something. But these people, if they have a cook meal program, they have no choice. If today is curry tai peng and every day is curry tai peng, it's just curry tai peng every day. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Malay, you're a Chinese lady or whatever, but every day you eat the same type of food, number one. And then secondly, the food is usually not to a good standard because it's not warm. The cooked meals are just hung at the door at a specific
right,
time. Yeah. And the other thing also is most of us, as donors as well, which is why we implemented our own bundle program, is because a lot of people, whenever they go out to give food aid, they always give the same thing. There's always rice, there's always oil, there's always some sort of canned food. But do you know that the most sought after product is like peanut butter, bread spreads,
mm,
kaya, breakfast items, children's cereals, nutritious three-in-one hot beverages, for example. But these are not frequently at the top of people's list. And then like people give a lot of instant noodles as well, which actually you shouldn't be consuming that much. So some of the people say, hey, stop giving me food aid because every time you're giving me the same things of items that I actually don't want to consume. Yeah.
yeah. So that brings to the next point. In from food aid, it ends up becoming a food wastage again.
Yeah.
So isn't this a very strange cycle that kind of goes round? Now, when it comes to that, right? Do you end up having to collect from these from those who are receiving the aid and then being able to then supplement them with something else of what they want?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is we still don't go door to door to collect all these extra items, but we take a
Mm,
few initiatives to minimize food waste because every dollar donation counts to anybody, especially in today's very tight world, right? Where actually donations, every penny counts a lot to us. So firstly, we have briefed our volunteers. If you see this uncle already having so many bags of rations, but we're supposed to give some bundle to them, please don't give that household another bag of food because the uncle likely already have enough to last him for the entire month. We can always
mm,
go back to him the next month and check if he still needs food. So this is one way of minimizing food waste, and that bundle can actually go to someone else in need. Plenty of people that will need it, number one. So the other thing that we have done is we have been collaborating with our 370 charity organizations for reverse collection. So
mm,
sometimes, and Singapore's a great country. We celebrate like so many celebrations, right? Hari Raya, and then you have your, Vesak Day that just
Mm.
passed. So at different points, the different religious organizations are flooded with donations at different times of the year. So like, especially during the Raya period, for example, like Ramadan, there would be a lot of food that's floating around the mosque. So they say, hey, do you want to take these items and give it to someone else in need? So what we have done is we do reverse collection with the NGOs, the larger NGOs, or like, Vesak Day, the temples will be flooded with all the bihuns and all that. So we actually go down and say, hey, we would pick it up. And then so we don't need to buy so much, or we don't need to salvage so much donated of this bihun, for example. And then we actually just use this still very good food to be supplemented in the bundles, or just give it to other charities or smaller charity organizations that are not connected to the larger NGOs. So this was these are some of the efforts. And importantly, some of you may have already heard about our vending machines. The vending machines was actually born out of a need. So out of all the donations that we receive all the time from 2012 to now, the average number is we still have about 10 to 15% of the donations that cannot be redistributed. Whether is it to atas, so we have a lot of organic products that actually a lot of the underprivileged families, they don't know how to consume, number one. Secondly, the shelf life may also be too short. And thirdly, it's just not suited for our taste, for example. So we have a lot of interesting items like popcorn, potato chips, and things like that. So we have like 10 to 15% of the items that at the food banks level that we used to throw away. So we say, hey, let's do something interesting about this excess food donations. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we started our first food aid food pantry, as we call it at Geylang. So it was a 24/7 operating shop. It was just called the Food Pantry. It was supposed to be a food aid program where anybody just walk in, you can get your free food. But people like you and I that are interested to find out, like, hey, can I buy something for $1? It was like $1 shop it's like a thrift
Mm.
shop for food. So, but we were actually just regenerating some revenue from this short shelf life donations that would otherwise be thrown away and giving it a new lease of life. So we started as a food pantry that was manned by an elderly gentleman. But soon we realized that it wasn't humanly possible to staff someone there, STAFF, for 24/7. So we closed down the shop, stopped paying rental, and we used technology instead. And that was when we implemented our first vending machine in 2019 during World Food Day in October. We said we actually rolled out our first vending machine at Toa Payoh, stocking up all the interesting items that either were shorter shelf life or interesting products that we couldn't really redistribute. And we complemented it with some items that were daily necessities as well. So the food vending machine was actually born out of a need to reduce food waste for the food donations. But secondly, we also implemented this thing called the bank card system where there's food credits inside so that anyone in need can walk to any of the vending machines and redeem food 24/7. Because now the other gap that we have in the ecosystem of feeding the underprivileged is that usually charities only operate during office hours, maximum half a day on Saturdays. But if any one of you who are even listening in or been through a bad phase before, if you go hungry or if the sole breadwinner, for example, of the family is suddenly incarcerated for whatever reason and he didn't get his monthly salary for that month yet, right?
Mm.
The wife and the children are suddenly left with an empty cupboard and empty stomachs. So they actually are looking for food like on a Sunday or at midnight or something like that. So that's where the vending machines come in. And it becomes very handy where anybody can just supplement their food 24/7. Yeah.
Right. Can you imagine a world, right, whereby if every 7-Eleven had something like that, where you could just walk
Correct.
in? That would be wonderful because 7-Elevens are everywhere, convenience stores are everywhere. If we could do that, that would be amazing. But also, one of the things, would you ever consider having a pay it forward initiatives with all the hawkers in Singapore?
Yes.
Meaning to say that I
Um,
have a choice to now have, my char kway teow and say that, okay, look, here's $10. Please, at your discretion, all right, the next 3 people or 4 people, whoever it is you want to, please give them a free meal.
yes. So we actually experimented with something last year. So last year, because of the sheer need, right, everybody needed some cooked meals, and there were many other ground-up initiatives that was doing this paid forward concept where people were just going out buying meals, telling this hawker uncle, like I pay for 10 char kway teow, 10 Hokkien mee or whatever, anybody that comes. So the feedback from the hawkers was the problem is there wasn't a way to recognize the people that were redeeming the meals. Yeah. So because the hawkers also felt that they wanted to ensure that help was being given to the right people. It's not about the
Right.
money, because they are already being paid. So they wanted to be very sure about it. So they wanted a way to be able to track it. So this inspired us to actually roll out something, and you might be the first to hear this because the press release is being drafted. Our
Oh,
bank cards is going to be accepted at F&B outlets.
oh,
So what
that's
happens
amazing.
is, yeah, so we are actually empowering firstly the people in need to redeem food aid, not just through vending machines, but at some point they will be able to walk into the kopitiams, fast food chains as well, to redeem the meals any time of day. It also means that they can choose whatever they want to eat. So it means that if today I want to splurge on some large Happy Meal or something, right? Up to you, because it's your food credits is your way of redeeming it. Or let's say one of your relatives or your daughter's birthday is coming up this week. I want to accumulate all my credits, but I want to blow it out and eating it somewhere like maybe a bak kut teh or a better meal. You can actually choose. So actually by June, July, we will be making this official announcement that the underprivileged will be able to redeem the F&B credits at some selected F&B outlets as a pilot program. But by end of the year, there'll be a lot more F&B outlets that will be invited to be onboarded for people to redeem their meals island-wide. And coming back to the pay it forward, we are finding a system, finding it an appropriate system where the donors can just say that if I walk into, this fast food chain, for example, you can actually pledge it forward, and the money actually just goes back to the food bank to topping up the bank cards so that the credits can be well utilized as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. And with these food bank cards, right, at the same time, this brings up one of the questions that I was thinking through as well. When you decide how much credits goes into this person's card, or at least on the whole, does that kind of also be determined based on income levels, or is this a mean or median level that you've already found?
Okay. So, Edric, to answer that question, it was a question that we asked ourselves in 2012. How do we, as the food bank, ascertain who needs help? And my brother and I decided very early on, that that's not our forte, because the social fabric in Singapore is already well documented. That means most of the families in need, right, or the people in need have already gone through some level of means testing. So instead, we will be helping the organizations that have already this network of people. That means as long as these people have been accredited by the NGOs that gave the approval to get special bursaries or special food aid or whatever, it means that they have already gone through the system of testing. So in the same token, we are working with all our NGO partners to confirm who are the people in their database. That means this 1,000 people here, this 500 people here, that they have already gone through the different rounds of means testing to be able to receive this food card as well. So I'm not saying that the system is perfect, but this already actually helps us a lot to expedite the distribution versus, imagine a food bank going door to door asking people for information. I don't think we want to do that. Yeah.
No, not at all. Hey, if that's the case, right, then would you also be able to share a little bit more about how corporates, and not just just the personal side, but how can corporates take part, let's just say, for example, as part of our employment acts, to also include, let's say, a dollar contribution? It's like how CDAC or whichever organization is doing it, can they pledge it directly to food bank instead?
Yes. So the food bank, we have our IPC status, so any donation is 2.5 times tax deductible. But importantly, when we work with corporates, right, one very interesting part about the food bank is we run the food bank like a business.
Hmm.
So why we have regular different corporates that has been coming back to us is because every year we're always introducing something new, something refreshing, especially in the good old days when, everyone can just volunteer, or pledge their own money or pledge corporate money very regularly, right? So actually going door to door, giving food bundles doesn't quite cut it anymore. They're always looking for a fresher eye, more impact, on what they can do. So for any of the corporates out there who actually wants to have an X number of people being engaged, we will be very happy to even customize a certain program for any of your team members. But if you are just an entry level where you want to experience what food banking is all about, there are a few ways that you can support. So firstly, you can start by adopting a bank box. So at some point, I think all of us will not be locked up at home. Okay, for myself, I've never been locked up at home because we're
I
essential
just hope we don't.
services. Yeah. So, but a lot of us would be dabbling 50% of the time working from offices. So definitely we'll have time to interact in the office as well. A lot of corporates, something that's very popular is to adopt our bank boxes. So the bank boxes is a very interesting way to collect donations where actually people like you and I can drop 1 or 2 packets of items in this bank boxes, but the corporates can adopt it because there's an adoption fee of about $300 to $500, depending on the size of the box. These boxes are just stationed in the offices, and then the employees can just donate the items, and then the food banks will just go around to pick up the food. So this is one. The other thing, you can adopt our food bundles as well. And on this note, I'd like to share that we thought that during this heightened alert phase that the people that needs help won't be so high because it's not that bad a circuit breaker, right? So but we were quite shocked to have received now about 5,000 requests already, urgent requests for emergency food bundles because a lot of the kids were being held up at home, and I think a lot of the per hourly paid employees as well has also been now stuck at home. So basically, the income levels has also then dropped. So a lot of them are actually asking us for emergency food bundles. So immediately, if you wanted to do something, you can actually just support our food bundles. Some corporates have started writing. They said, "I'm sorry, my volunteers cannot leave the house right now. I can't do anything. But is there something that collectively that we can do?" So what you can do is just to suss out our food bundle program that's actually ongoing right now as well, and then you can actually do your part. And so these are two of the major programs that we have. But importantly, the other thing also is when time permits and when everything opens up, we are looking for volunteers as well as corporates to adopt our vending machines. Because now with COVID, right, the popularity of the vending machines has actually gone up because it minimizes the contact between the volunteers, and it's very, the underprivileged can just go any time of day, they can redeem whatever they want. It's a safer way to distribute food. So a lot of the CDCs, the mayors have actually reached out to ask us to deploy more vending machines. But I would just like to do a shout out that actually the vending machines are not free to us. So we have to buy these machines, and each machines cost 10, 15, $20,000 depending on the size of the machines. So in order to effectively deploy more machines, we actually need to raise funds again to ensure that we can actually put more machines out there. But the corporates can also help us to top up the food. So it can be, yes, you pay a one-time kind of a fee, but you can continuously also be engaged. Like every week, Monday to Fridays or Saturday, Sundays, you can actually help us to top up that particular machine as well, clean it down, and so it becomes adopt a machine kind of a thing as well. So it can be quite an interesting program for corporates. Yeah.
Right, that's great. And you were mentioning with the urgent requests and all this, it got me thinking as well. I'm sure that you also get very much involved in the schools, right? And it's really important to also then share that message with the kids so that they can take that back to their families, and eventually, because they're the ones who are saying that, hey, I'm hungry, I'm this, I'm that, but they don't have an outlet, and I don't think they definitely know. I mean, you've openly talked about you being a mother of four, and the amount of work that goes on in your household, I'm sure that you would definitely be able to appreciate that. That's for sure.
Yeah, so we were very heartened in our earlier days, right? That a lot of teachers started writing to us because there's no so other than the school pocket money fund, and some of the underprivileged kids having free food in the canteen, right? But we actually do not have a proper what we call a backpack program, like how it is in the US.
Right.
So how is it in the US is that every child that possibly needs some kind of food help, the family needs help. the food is actually disseminated via the child, but it comes in the form of a backpack that looks very school bag like. So actually nobody knows whether this kid needs help or what's in that backpack. But basically the school backpack program has been ongoing for a very long time, and it's a discreet way of disseminating food via the children. But because in Singapore we are very protective of whether is it confidentiality or whatever, these children are usually not highlighted in any way. So only school counselors will know, the form teachers will know, and a handful of the other teachers looking after welfare would know, but they cannot be made known openly as well. So while we really want to ramp up our initiatives into the schools, it is not as simple. But actually during COVID-19, right, this 1.5 years, a lot of the principals, a lot of the schools have been writing to us directly because they realize that they are not going to wait for the agencies or MOE to do something about it. They themselves really want to help the group of students that they already know. That means immediately before the closures of the schools, even during this time, we already got the emails like say, hey, I know that I have 100 kids. This 100 kids will need food. They will need food bundles. They will need this. Can you help me? And can you go door to door? So actually, they already written in to us very early on because we learned from last year. Last year, we were like scrambling, to go door to door for all the children. And just remembering, it's not just one child. This child likely has an older or a younger sibling in school as well. So it's likely 3 meals. And plus, there probably will likely be an elderly that's stuck at home that, also needs food aid. So usually when we help the kid, we're also helping that nuclear environment as well, because likely the mom and the dad is working outside. So he or she doesn't need the food. But whoever who's stranded at home actually requires the help and the aid. Yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful. Because I remember that you were mentioning the US. The US also has this the kids welfare program. So, but the only thing is that then they get coupons, which of course they have to go and collect from themselves, and it's from the schools, and they have to take it from the canteens, right? Whereas in Singapore, on the other hand, I'm not sure if such a program also exists.
Yeah, in Singapore there isn't such a program. So actually, from the food bank's angle, we've done it again a little differently with another program that we have, which is the Juniors Club.
Hmm.
So we have opened up volunteering or sharing sessions at schools from as young as 2.5 years old. Because like I mentioned earlier on in this conversation, that hunger doesn't have a face. So what we did was, instead of eyeballing who are the people in need, why don't we just do it from a CSR angle? That means we are telling the children that, hey, you can do projects on food waste, you can do projects on, how to eradicate food insecurity in Singapore, and maybe indirectly by raising awareness about food bank and food insecurity as school projects, as volunteering opportunities, this will infiltrate to people that, hey, actually maybe out of the 10, maybe one of them said, hey, actually I go hungry on a regular basis. I can actually learn something from this. Maybe food bank can give me help, or food bank can redirect me to the right agency that can then help me and my family that is facing hunger issues. So we've done it from an education standpoint, but importantly, you're right to say that children are the ones that is going to change the world that we live in. And they are the ones that are more concerned of their peers as well. So it's a very powerful thing, right? Even from primary school. The child can actually identify which of their friends are going hungry on a regular basis, because children don't really lie. I mean, the younger
Yeah.
ones, they're very honest about it. And so if children can actually start spreading the word, or maybe highlighting that to their teachers, that, hey, I think my friend needs help, then maybe the peers can help the peers also. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, the fact that it's very dear to my heart, teaching the kids, making sure that they themselves, right, come up with, or at least come forward with all this information. And not only that, living their lives with a lot more integrity, honesty, and a lot more compassion for the fellow
Mm.
man. I mean, the scariest thing about Singapore right now is that we've been in that rat race, from the 1980s all the way up. And the level of humanity, I think, or compassion, it gets less and less as we enter the more capitalistic society and needs.
Yes. I think empathy to a certain level is somewhat lacking. And the most amazing thing that we've kind of realized, and I see it from my own company, right? Because we started the food bank, we have also then enabled a lot of our own employees that are my hires are 90% non-graduates, right? They don't even, if they have O levels, I'm very thankful because they are like making deliveries, and they are just maybe customer service, but it really like paper pushers, orders, and stuff like very basic stuff. But what I've done is because we started a charity and we enabled them to support the food bank as well, it has made a positive impact in their lives because they themselves, maybe they might be facing some financial difficulties or whatever it is, right? But they have also then come to realize that, hey, although I'm facing my own struggles, maybe cash is a bit tight, but there are plenty of people that's way worse off than I am.
Yeah.
And because a lot of times you're in this rat race, right? Everyone is just working, throughout the day. I mean, actually now it's not even 9 to 5 anymore. It's like 12 to 12, right? Like we're working because of flexi working and everything else. We're working longer hours than ever before. We have empowered them to say that although you yourselves are facing some difficulties, but you can still help someone else in need. And it's the same thing that the students have taken away. So we have also done a lot of charity work at maybe some more neighborhood schools, as you say, not just elitist schools, but neighborhood schools. And some of the children, maybe they themselves come from not so good family backgrounds, for example. But because they have engaged themselves in some CSR, maybe they also then feel that, hey, actually, I also can help other people. And I'm hoping that this becomes a ripple effect. And this child brings this with them as they grow up and as they enter the workforce as well.
Wonderful. I mean, this is wonderful. I definitely pick something up when I'm starting my own thing, right? I'm definitely doing this because what you are doing is imparting not just the idea of charity or helping your fellow man, but imparting the value of gratitude, the act of gratitude of every day waking up knowing that I've got something to be thankful for. My life isn't that shitty. So that brings me to the next point as well. I would love to ask you about your leadership priorities as well. Now, there are excuse me, there are a couple of things that we always find equally important in running any business for any business leader, and that would be people, your policy, your profits, and your passion. So, out of these four, if you could kind of order them for yourself, what would they be like?
Mm, I think now more than ever, we have to lead with passion. And it's not just passion for your business, but it's passion for life in general. So, and I will say this because I think it's a very depressing world that we're in.
Yes.
And I think we're not just bosses, we're not just entrepreneurs, but we are also inspirations. And we have to be able to inspire as well as allow people to be aspired, right, at some point. So that sense of passion that we have is also about leading life to its fullest, right? Understanding what all my employees' passions are as well. So
Mm,
actually, interestingly, the first question that I ask anybody who comes for an interview, what's your dream? That's my first question. So if I interview like a 21-year-old that just graduated, I usually ask the person, what's your dream? That means how do you imagine yourself, let's say at 70 years old, retiring? Is it so where would you be at that point? And it worries me at this juncture that a lot of them don't know.
yeah.
So I because I think your life or anybody, right, at any point in your lives, it starts with that vision, that end goal.
Mm,
Like, it doesn't matter whether is it you want to climb up the career ladder or you want to have your own business or volunteering your time or even sipping coconut under a coconut tree, right? I mean, that's a dream. But a lot of the younger people that I've been interviewing, they don't have anything. And this is something that's really worrying for me, which is why as a business leader, as a company leader, as a family leader, as an NGO leader, it's even more important now to have more passion so that your passion can fuel other people's passions. Because everything else, right? Policies will change. And I mean, nowadays, policies change every 2 hours, right? Policies keep changing, the world keeps changing, and even priorities at some point will keep fluctuating. But if you're leading with your heart, you're leading with some sense of passion or a deep seated idea of how you want to lead your own life, that doesn't change because that fire has to continuously keep burning. It is, as a human being, if you don't have a passion for anything, I think that becomes very sad. at some point. So you need to find your own passion or your own calling. Yeah, money making or not. Yeah.
Agreed. So that will be your passion first, your people second, of course. Then you've got left with profit and policy. Where do they lie in the number 3 and 4?
I think once you get the policies right, the profits will stream in. I'm not saying that money is not important, but if profits become the number one of everything, then it's also a question mark. So I think just another addition to your question is um, we we started evaluating our internal company values very, very early on because I mean we've been through plenty of ups and downs, and we've also kind of realized that we cannot just run a business based on a lot of money. Yeah, and I think this is very timely to even just put this in, right? Some of the SMEs out there, if you're listening in, some people actually feel that is it very difficult to put a value or CSR or ESG into my philosophy of my business, because this is something that the big MNCs strive to have, right? Their
Yeah.
CSR goals, what is their ESG goals, reducing carbon footprint, how to be sustainable, and things like that. These are very big ticket ambitions that a lot of people are feeling that, hey, actually, this one can only be achieved by the big boys. But I think this is wrong. I think now, even as a sole proprietor, as an SME, or even if you're just ideating what your business is all about, I think you need to figure out what's your value proposition internally. That means what's your mission statement? And I've shared this before with some people. And for those of you who understand Mandarin, right? So actually, 公司 or 社会 started out as a cluster of people that came together that serve different needs. So the barber was there for a reason because he could cut hair well, and a cook was a cook because he could cook well. But it's just that in the industrialization over the last 100 over years, we've kind of lost sight or actually what is our role and responsibility in society. But if you are really a business, you are just fulfilling a need in society. And I think that's something that's important to remember. That means you are not just setting up a business for the sake of like making tons of money. I would say that that wouldn't have any longevity to it. But if you start a business with a purpose in mind, the profits will somehow come in at some point. Yeah.
Agreed. That's why I remember about 7 years ago that tribal culture, right, started making a real comeback. And this is precisely why. Exactly. The fabric of society has changed so much that it became such a commercial entity that we've forgotten a lot more about why, the initial reasons and purposes of businesses, trade, and skill sets have come about. I was actually telling my wife just yesterday that in this day and age, you better have a blue collar skill up your sleeve because white collar isn't going to be forever. So whether or not, I better learn how to make a table, carve out a chair, fix a toilet, do something, right? Because if the world goes to shit, like we're living the zombie apocalypse or something like that, we better know how to go and feed ourselves and our families. That's for sure. And
Yes.
thinking about your work and all this, one of the um, burning questions that I really have, right, is you've talked about this so often, and I think so many people have been asking you about this in multitasking. But I'm not going to ask you how you do it, but I'm going to ask you the second layer of how you do it, meaning to say that in your mind, when you have 5 things to do, is it more of the discipline to focus on one item and get it out of the way, move to the next one? Or are you really thinking about 5 things at one time? What's going on in there?
Okay, this is a female thing. So I think we have many checkboxes
I have
that we can
boxes, you
operate.
don't have
Yeah.
boxes.
Yeah. So in my mind, I've got plenty of boxes, and in those boxes, there are subdividers, right? So my hubby has a box, my children has a box, every child has a box, my mom has a box, my grandaunt has a box, and then the business has a box. As you can hear, my family will come first because I really feel that if we stabilize our personal life a little bit more and it doesn't bug you as much, then you can actually go on to your work or your career. And I think this is something that a lot of you would actually realize, right? Over the last 12 months, we kind of realized that if we don't stabilize our family, and be able to keep them quiet for a couple of minutes, our meetings will never go on. But that's how I envision it. And the second thing is I have a sense of discipline. But that's just my own pet peeve or my idea. I cannot stand it when my inbox still has emails at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I have to like either file them up or read them or send a reply. So for any of the emails that's balanced in my inbox, it means that it's my to-do list for the next day. And then, so this is something that I do. The same thing for all my WhatsApp messages, or the same thing for anything in my life. So if I don't check off the boxes for that day, it would mean that that's something that will be left behind for my work to do tomorrow. And my personal philosophy is that whatever that I can do or accomplish in this hour, I will do it within this hour, and it's not even within this day. So that's how I think I try to squeeze in everything that I want to do effectively and efficiently as well. So that I can take on more projects or responsibilities or one more child, if I wanted to.
You're going for number
Yeah,
5.
yeah, maybe. Let's see how things goes. Yeah.
My goodness, you are 24/7. That's all I have to say. Your day and your nights are going to be busy if that's the case.
Yes.
But when we talk about the multitasking as well, if you mentioned all these compartmentalization, that's great. And you don't leave work for the next day, or at least if you do. If I did that, I'd have anxiety, like serious anxiety issues. How are you coping with that mentally?
Um, I am someone that needs to close up the file for the day. Yeah, and I
If
think
not, you've
that's
become one. You
just
feel very upset.
yes, and so that's why if any of you were writing an email to me, or don't be so surprised that at 3 a.m. I will reply you, or I will say something. So in between my night feeding duties or whatever, looking after the kids at night, so I watch them myself at night, right? So during that time, I will still think of other things or daydream. I'm now very good at, if I'm like doing homework with my kids or something, I that gives me some free space in my mind as well to be able to dream. And I think one very important thing that I've also learned is that something that makes me very happy is the ability to be creative. Whether is it from any facets of my life, right? So even for the charity, we've been very creative. So a lot of the new ideas actually spur from the moments of me daydreaming. So, and I think by being a little bit more efficient and being tidy and making sure that all my boxes are checked for the day-to-day stuff that needs to be done, I realized that then that gives me a little bit more time to daydream. If that allows me to dream, and that stirs me to then, okay, I need to settle all the very mundane stuff, that's boring stuff that needs to be done, so that it gives me something that I can derive pleasure from. So that's how I manage things. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful! And in previous interviews, and also quite a number of articles that have you've been featured in, has mentioned many stories about your father and your grandfather. Starting a business, again, the ring fencing of the business and getting that done. One of the things that I would like, if possible, for you to share with the audience is that I'm a big believer in generational wisdom, because that becomes an encyclopedia of knowledge as we go from generation to generation. What's yours that was passed down?
So I've never met my grandfather,
Mm,
but I hear the stories about him.
right.
So two biggest takeaways, right? So one of the things that inspired me about my grandfather is that he doesn't leave a single bean behind. So when I say that, I mean it, because he came from a generation where he's running a provision shop, right? So every bean that drops on the floor is business to him.
Right.
But now in our kind of disposable generation, is one bean, I'm just going to dump it away. So that actually inspired me to review how we're looking at food waste right now, and why we have so much food waste is because we don't appreciate food as much. So for my grandpa, this was one of the things that I took away, whether is it from running the business or whether is it from running the charity standpoint. So I share this about him because he was a very stingy man as well, of course. But secondly is resilience. My grandfather was a very resilient man because after his first wife passed away, he just came to Singapore, leave his eldest daughter behind. He brought his younger daughter with him to start a new life, on a bumboat, not knowing what Singapore brings, right? But he actually came here all the way, knowing that he has to make something new, with whatever that he had, and he built something from basically nothing. So resilience was, again, the other thing that I took away. And it's just that resilience is making a comeback right now, right? I mean,
Mm.
resilience was the word. But this has always been something that's been in our family. And then about my dad, I think I learned from his the failures that he has made. Yeah, I don't I think a lot of times people always like hooray, hooray about the successes, how much money, how much whatever, but nobody has spoken enough about failures. And through my dad, I learned from him through the failed stories that he had. So from a complete bankrupt, how did he overcome it? And from a man who had once had everything that he could possibly have, owning tons of buildings, 40 companies in 25 countries, how did he end from there to all the way down at, and fighting his own internal struggles and insecurities as well. So no disrespect to my father, but I learned through his hardships.
Mm.
And, he was from that generation that if my business was going through a tough time, I would put everything that I have, my own personal name, my own personal money, and my own personal house, my own personal unit trust account to the company. Like everything, it's intertwined. And that was the reason, this is one of the biggest takeaways. And I think for any of the business owners or the entrepreneurs, you would maybe agree with me at some point that I need to start drawing the line. Yes, business is business, family is family. It is very important for me to be able to ring fence my family in case anything should happen to the business. I cannot be forsaking everything that I've worked so hard on for the business because business is, especially with the pandemic now, right? We all kind of realize that we're part of a much bigger machine, what we call the world or the earth, that it's not within our control. No matter how good your business is, no matter how best your policies are, it's not foolproof because we are not in control of the greater universe that we are in.
Mm.
Whether is it from God's greater powers or whether is it from the global economy, a lot of these forces are beyond us. And so therefore, what I learned from my dad is that why he greatly failed is that because he couldn't um, dismantle himself from the business.
Right.
And Edric, I would share this is that from his mental capacity, he never quite got out of the failed business as well because we never got back to a stage where we were as big as we were. And to him, he felt like he failed as a father, that he didn't give his children something to boast about. Or he felt that there was he wanted to revive the business to a stage where it was everything on the silver platter. I've got something to hand down to my next generation, not a pile of debts. And
Mm.
instead, I had to reverse the counseling for my dad to say that, hey, dad, there's so much that you have given to me already. You don't have to give me a bag full of money because you've given me so much more teachings, so much more intergenerational wisdom that I have taken away that I know that I'm going to build on that so that the business that we're going to build on for the years to come is going to be even stronger, maybe more resilient than what it was. Learn from the lessons that you have learned. And I will also hand this business or this learnings that I've learned to the next generation, not necessarily my children, but for anybody out there who want to listen to the story that I have to tell. Yeah.
Yeah. Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Teach a man to fish. You, yeah, feed him for a lifetime. So that's exactly what it really is. And thank you so much for spending, this amount of time with us. I've got one more segment that we do with every guest that we have, and it's a great segment because it's just 10 rapid fire questions, right? For anybody to get to know you real quick. All right. So,
Okay.
Nicole, with the epic questionnaire, are you ready?
I think so.
Okay, here we go. Question number one. One word that you love the most.
Yellow comes to mind.
Interesting. One word that you dislike the most.
Money.
Money. It's the irony. You run a multi-million dollar company and you're saying you
Whatever comes to
dislike the
mind,
word
right?
money.
Whatever comes to mind. Okay,
Yeah,
so that's
okay. You got me there. If you could have a conversation with one person, fictional, non-fictional, dead or alive, who would that be?
Lee Kuan Yew.
Lee Kuan Yew. Interesting. What's the first question you'd ask him then?
What did you have for dinner?
Oh, cool. Nice. He was very healthy, by the way. He used to eat very, very clean, to my understanding. Yeah, we'll have a conversation about health and fitness another time if you've got time. Well,
Okay.
let's do a segment on that. Anyway, what do you say to yourself in the mirror every morning?
I'm fat.
Oh, you're still going through it? No, come on.
Yes, it's something that's stuck at the back of my mind. It doesn't leave you if any of you suffers from it, right? It's long enough. The eating disorder doesn't quite leave you 100%, but that happens. Yeah, I think I'm a little bit too critical about myself sometimes, but
But then,
yeah.
what do you tell yourself after that then?
Hey, I'm a great mom.
Okay, that's more important. That is super,
Yeah.
super, super powerful. Okay, more power to you. Now, name one superpower that you'd like to have.
Hmm. I would like to have a stronger sixth sense.
Hmm,
If there was
interesting.
such a
Basically,
superpower, I
to
already have a very strong sixth sense, but I want to have a stronger sixth sense so that I can
hear what
just,
people are thinking.
yeah, exactly.
See, this is so common. Though. All the entrepreneurs that I've spoken with all keep telling me, I want to have that. Very few of them will actually tell me invisibility. I ask them why. He said, oh, it's because I want to hear what people are saying. I'm like, it's the same thing. Okay,
Yeah.
anyway, favorite dish to eat?
Fried Kai Lan with ginger.
Lovely. Very clean. Very nice. Favorite travel spot or the next travel spot you'd like to go to once borders open up?
I've not been to Egypt actually. I would really like to go there. And especially, I want to go near the Gaza Strip area if I can.
Mm,
Yeah,
just
if
to
not,
see
the
what
other
it's like.
location would be Israel. Yeah, Israel
The
or
Middle
something.
East in
Yeah,
general. That
yeah,
would be
correct.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Something in the arts that you've always wanted to do, but you have yet to do so.
Something in the arts. I'm quite arty-farty. I've won talent times and all that as well. So,
Mm.
I actually have wanted to do a 3D art piece in my house if I have space, but the inspiration would be about faces. So I don't know how that will happen, but using maybe food waste or recycled materials. But I really want to do a huge, maybe a 2 meter by 2 meter. That's the art piece that I want. That means very street art, very graffiti kind of a
Ah,
feel.
nice.
Yeah, but that's the art piece that I want to do.
Interesting. Actually, you could start experimenting with 3D, sorry, using VR first. Have you tried
Yes,
that?
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
No, I've not
it's
done that
really
yet.
cool. Yeah, I cannot do the depth perception. I don't know what's wrong with me. Something's an issue. Um, what does retirement look like to you?
Um, Working at 90, retirement would mean that maybe I'm a great grandmother or grandmother at that point, still ferrying my great grandkids around. Yeah, because I don't think I'll be, I'm a workaholic. I think that's, if there ever is my blood type is B plus, but probably I'm going to have a workaholic bloodstream. But that's how I think I will have an IV drip on like this, working for life kind of thing. But I
Mm.
truly enjoy working, and I'm not just like, it's not a piecemeal thing. That's what drives me on a regular basis. I'll be finding for the next big thing to do.
Interesting. Suddenly, I pictured the that scene in Masters of the Sea when you talked about that. But anyway, those who
Yeah,
are listening, if you're too young, you don't know.
yeah. Actually, just to add to that, right? I'm so inspired by Elon Musk's mom, right? Like May Musk, because
Mm.
she revived her modeling career at 70 something, right? So why can't I do something different at 70? Which I don't know what that is, maybe like a singer or something, but completely different job altogether. Because how I wanted to do is to follow my eldest kid to university, to study something else, maybe in 10 years' time. So, that's something that, yeah.
Wow, I would do that to my kid just so I can embarrass him. It's like it's just for the heck of it. But I did want to ask you as well. This is outside of the questionnaire. You seem like such a tinkerer. I would have expected you to have done your own fashion line and all this by now.
My first project, in fact, this was in 1998. I still have the drafts if any of you are interested to see. I wanted to start the Sassy Cheeks Cafe. This was before PS Cafe. The Sassy Cheeks Cafe, where it was a hybrid of a cafe, because I love to cook, and a fashionista, like a fashion outlet within the shop as well. So it was a hybrid.
Mm.
And I even found the location for it. it was going to be at where Grand Hyatt is, where B&O is right now. So
Right.
it's everything, people can see in, and importantly, there needs to be a kids cooking class inside also. So this was in 1998. So maybe that might be part of my retirement plan to go back to basics.
Possibly. It actually is good. If you did it back then, you would have been ahead of the curve. But that also
Yeah.
means that it would be difficult for the public to grasp the
Accept.
idea. That's
Yeah.
right. All right. Now, last question. Question number 10. This is the longest epic questionnaire I've done. I have no idea why I'm so distracted today. How do you want to be remembered? What's your legacy?
Mm, I'm thinking of my tombstone now, if I ever have one.
Yeah, that's pretty much the question, actually. What do you want on your tombstone? Apart from, less algae and moss.
I think just an exclamation mark.
Not an X?
So not an X, but I think an exclamation mark. So it's like I'm always making an exclamation about something, and I think throughout my 20 odd years in career, NGO, everything, I'm always about making a statement about something. So let the exclamation mark be the mark. Yeah.
I think that would be the one that really stands out, having the exclamation there. No name, no picture, no dates, nothing. Just an exclamation
Yeah.
mark. So, okay, so whoever is paying tribute in the future, you know who this person is now. All right. So, again, thank you so much. Thank you so much to Nichol for sharing, her knowledge and her experience, not just in business leadership, but more importantly, how to be a great human being, how we're helping our fellow man and woman child. Okay, so if you're out there, please again go down to foodbank.sg, see if you can pledge something at the end of the day. And also for me, do a little bit of charity as well. Click that like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. All right, with that, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much. And Nichol,
Thank
all right, stay on the
you.
line, yeah? All right, bye bye.